So the NFL's got this thing, 18 games are really trying to push hard for. Really trying to push hard for it. And apparently George Atala, who's the former NFLPA chief of external affairs, he spoke with Mike Florio, and he explained the rationale for the 18 games coming sooner rather than later.
I think there is a massive push by the owners to get to a place where they can time it with the last of the, with the expiration of the TV deals, the upcoming broadcast deals. And this 18 game thing, look, a little bit of history. They wanted it in 2009. They directly stated that they wanted to lock players out in 2011, which was one of their goals, was to get 18 games. The 2011 deal prevented them from doing that. And the 2020 deal prevented them from going to 18 without collective bargaining and bargaining a new CBA. So when you look at the landscape of media and broadcast rights moving forward, and this ties in, I think, to the international opportunity, my gut tells me that they're going to want to time a new collective bargaining agreement with 18 games around the broadcast deals or before that, so that they can get potentially one last consolidated set of media deals before, who knows when the next fracturing of media and streaming is going to come. And that's why I think it's going to be before.
So that was George Atala talking with Mike Florio about the potential of 18 games coming here in the next few years. It's just a foregone conclusion at this point, right? Like, is there any confidence whatsoever that the players are going to put up enough of a fight that we don't get to 18 games?
Well, they're not going to fight it. The question is, like, what do you ask for back in return? I mean, guys like Myles Garrett already have in their contract how their compensation would increase with an 18th game. So they're preparing for it. It's just, is this move one that the players have already conceded to the owners because of the language in the CBA, or I should say the NFLPA has already conceded to the owners and just said, well, yeah, they'll figure it out whenever they want to do it. I mean, the strategy's sound. I mean, if you think about it from the owner's perspective, and you keep trying to raise that bottom line, and that's really what Roger Goodell's been tasked with since he's taken over as commissioner of the NFL, is let's maximize how many games we can play in a season. I have a hard time believing they'll get to 20. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in 10 years they will be playing 20 games and we won't have any preseason. But 18 feels like, with the calendar, the way it'd work, I mean, what we would bump back to President's Day weekend? That would essentially be, Super Bowl Sunday, then you have Monday off as the holiday. And that would be nice for probably everyone involved who watches it and participates in being, part of the Super Bowl parties and festivities. I mean, that in a perfect world is probably what the schedule looks like. But to me, this might be one of your last and only shots, if you're a player, to then get something back significant from the owners, because they're going to use this to be able to take a huge jump in what they're going to make in the TV media rights deals, probably when they opt out in 2029. And that's when you're going to see a huge shift as well in how we consume it. It might not be your linear television networks. It might end up being your streaming networks. And that, again, we'll see. We're at 2025 now. There's obviously some issues we've talked about with betting and being able to, have people place bets because of the, buffering with streaming and, the lag time and all of that. But that is a real possibility as you look at Netflix wanting to get more involved, Amazon wanting to get more involved, and who knows, like, what other streaming platform could get into the mix as well.
I just wonder what is the benefit for the I mean, I know the players can make more money. They throw more money into it. I get that, but 18, 20 games, at what point do you get to, one, the oversaturation point, and two, we have all these conversations surrounding the safety of the game. And you start to wonder, like, all the rules and legislation going towards, the conversations about what takes place, what's allowed to take place within the game, how physical the game is, how physicality has been legislated pretty much out of the game. At what point do you say the altering of the product, or some would say the evolution of the product, at what point do you say, for the sake of having more of it, you sacrifice what the essence of what the game has represented? Like, that's, for me, that's what I start. The more I listen to adding more games, I mean, you're barely able to physically make it out. When it was 16, you were barely physically able to make it out of that, especially if you had playoff runs. So now you're getting to a point of where you're taking the regular season to that many games, and it's not like a whole lot more that you're adding, but in football terms, I think it is. I think it is a lot more. And so, again, I ask the question, are you sacrificing what football represents? I'd rather have a more physical game and have less of them than have a less physical game and have more of them. And it's justified to have more because the practices aren't as hard, the physicality isn't as much, and the injuries, like you could talk about how the injuries are going down. I wonder how much this tush push has to do with, it's not about just necessarily, it's an unstoppable play. Maybe it has everything to do with continuing the narrative of how much this game is being cleaned up into being a more consumable game by moms, by younger people, because the physicality of it isn't there. We haven't heard the narratives that were out there when the CTE and the concussions hit the media. We haven't really heard those conversations in the ferocity that we did back then. I mean, if you think about it, the NFL has done a pretty damn good job of getting through the concussion era of what the media was really focused in on, what the consumer was really focused in on. So now you're not talking about concussions like you did before. You're just talking about other things, and other things being adding more games. It's kind of crazy, man. To me, it's kind of crazy to think that you go from there to now you're adding more games, which means there's more opportunities for those concussions, more opportunities for those injuries to take place that are taking place in the game that people had problems with, 7-8 years ago?
Maybe I'd forgotten, but I didn't realize that they've been pushing for 18 games since, as you mentioned, all the way back to 2009. Like, this has been that long they've been trying to get to this point, and they got to 17 a few years ago. But I didn't realize that this had been a push by the NFL, by the owners, for as long as it was. And it just feels like we're at the point now to where it's going to happen. It'll happen in the next couple of years, and they'll just reduce more practice time, reduce more off-season commitments needed, or I don't know how that works, but. When you mentioned the physicality back when it was 16 and it was difficult to get through that, was if you would have had the practicing and all the other things outside of the games the way it is now back then, how much easier would it have made getting through the season? I mean,
clearly it's probably made it easier to get through, but are you better? Is it better? Is it a better product, or are these guys better? I would say I look at some of the things that take place on football fields, and it's clearly not as good. It's not better. I feel like tackling is poor. It's not better. You don't see guys doing better at tackling. There's certain things. I feel like some of the injuries that take place is because they don't have enough physicality in practice, or there isn't enough physical play in terms of acclimating yourself to playing the game of football. But again, the game of football is rapidly changing as well. So it's hard to say, Jonas. I think it's hard to say that one way or the other that, okay, it's, are you better off approaching it the way that you are now with less practice, more time, more downtime, less practices. Like, there were at one point in time, you had 3 practices and 2 of them were in pads. Like, at one point in time in football, you practiced 3 times during the day. One was more defensive oriented. One was more offensive oriented, and then the last one, usually at night, was more special teams oriented, and you probably do like a little scrimmage or something like that, and you be done. But you're talking about a process that took all day long and all night long, and they don't do those things anymore. But has that made the game better? I don't know that it's made the product better. I mean, it's being consumed. And like you said, it's going into streaming platforms, so it's expanding. I just don't know, adding games at some point, like 18, like shut it down.
This is why the product doesn't quite matter. Because I'm with you. I feel like even like if you're looking at quarterback play, a lot of quarterbacks who are coming into the league, it's a big adjustment, or the team has to adjust their offense to fit the quarterback because they can't do the things that they once were asked to do, or they don't have the time in the offseason to teach them the way they need to. So they just say, all right, shoot, let's just put in an offense that is similar to what they had in college. I mean, that's a reality for some teams. But the reason why I feel like the product doesn't matter quite as much is because we live in a world now where everything's broken up into like some quick highlights you see on social media. Like no one watches the entire game. No one reads the entire book. They have the cliff notes. They go see, they don't listen to the entire podcast. They hear like a 2-minute clip, 3-minute clip. They form their opinion off that. They read a 150-word tweet on X. Like that's the reality of the world we live in. So like when you talk about streaming platforms and how like they're getting involved, yeah, of course, because they just cut up the content, they throw it out there, they make a few, splash highlight plays, and people are like, oh yeah, it's great. It's like, well, it's not as good as it once was, technically speaking, but sure, yeah, it's good. I mean, that's the part of the issue is the NFL owners have never been concerned with development. Like they've never been concerned about saying, oh, this is, bad for the league if we don't have more development. And by the way, the NFLPA has never been concerned with development. And people can take issue with me saying that, but if they really cared about it, they wouldn't have short off seasons. They wouldn't keep reducing off seasons. They wouldn't even keep reducing hitting during the off season. Because the reality is you got to hit if you're going to play football. So you can't practice some of the things you need to practice and you need to find out about these guys until you actually get into training camp where you can put pads on. I mean, that's the tough part about this. And I'm not so sure it's even good for their bodies to not prepare their body throughout the course of the year for that punishment, for what that game actually entails. And so if you kind of look at all of this, the entirety of the NFL and NFLPA, it's like no one's really cared about the development piece of the product. They're just like, no, let's just keep driving up the total revenue, how much we're generating. That's where we're at.
I don't know. That's a good thing. But it is what it is. I mean, it seems like they're able to continue to maneuver and get more deals done, and the relevance of it is what it is. I mean, I would say if we look at it, they're the ones that facilitated probably the flag football deal being a part of the Olympics when it gets here. Different things like that. They're trying to do more and more things to expand the brand. And I get it. It's a business. I get it. But as a former participant, as a former player, and I'm not on a high horse like, oh, it should be done the way that it was. There's a lot of things that I didn't like when we were playing that they could have probably did better. But I just say this. I mean, I played against guys like Jerome Bettis and Eddie George and Fred Taylor. I had to get around guys like Larry Allen and Tony Baselli and Flozell Adams and guys like that. Like if I'm not getting prepared to be able to tackle those guys, I don't know what that feels like when I get into the game. I like, and I'm just being honest. Like there's one thing to thud up, and which they call thudding. You make contact with the guy, you show that you're there to make the play, but you don't take the guy, you don't wrap him up, you don't take him down. They don't want you to injure anybody in the situation. I don't know what that looks like in a real game where the hole opens up and Eddie George is coming through that hole. I don't know what that looks like if Lorenzo Neal is coming through that hole or Sam Gash is coming through that hole to block me. I don't know what that looks like now. You know what I mean? Like, what does that feel like? You don't find out about yourself really until you get into a game.
Yeah, but you know what's effed up about it? The NFL doesn't care as long as somebody can gamble on it.
Well, there you go.
Like, you deal with it. Like, we're trying to make money so people can gamble on these games.
No.
And the second that got brought in, the whole game changed. Like, now it's...
Believe you me, if you haven't done enough work in practice to prepare for a guy like, and listen, they don't have this anymore, but you haven't actually figured out how to bring a guy like Mike Allstott to the ground, then good luck. And that's like the equivalent probably of like a Derrick Henry right now. You know, good luck. You get into the game, y'all haven't done no real hitting, no real thumping, and you got some of these offensive linemen out here that are, you know, clearly able to, you know, the kid in Detroit. Who's that kid? He be freaking mowing people down. The
David Montgomery?
No, the lineman that they drafted.
Panay
Sewell.
Yeah.
Like, you get guys like that out there. Like, how are you handling that once you get into the game?
By the way, I got to give you credit, man. Your comp for Mike Allstott's Derrick Henry?
No, I said guys like that, though.
Oh, I was going to say.
I'm saying that guys like that. Like, think about it. I gave you Jerome Bettis.
Yeah.
They called him the bus.
But, like, you fit the criteria of how we do comps on this show, where it can't be the same race. It's got to be opposite.
Yeah, no, I don't do that. I wasn't even working for a comp that way. I was, like, thinking of bigger backs that you have to deal with. Like, that's what I'm saying. So during my time playing, there were bigger backs. So, and the crazy thing is that you could think, oh, well, I have a bigger back. I don't have to try to run them down. They're just as fast as the little dudes. They just ain't trying to be as elusive. But they're just as fast. So I got to deal with how fast or how quick this dude is. But I also got to deal with how strong and how physical they are. How do you learn that in today's game? How do you figure that out?
Did you go against Brandon Jacobs?
I did.
How was that?
That's probably a better comp for Derrick Henry. It hurts. It hurts to hit them type dudes. That's what I'm saying. So you got to understand like what you're getting yourself into. You know, it's like, all right, you're going to be a bull rider, but we want to add more rodeos to your schedule. We're just not going to put you on bulls too much anymore because we don't want you to get hurt, you know, in practice so that you could go ride the bull in the real rodeos. Like, okay, you get on that bull not knowing what it feels like to get on that bull, and you're going to have a poor product. That's all I'm saying.
Jesus, Brandon Jacobs was 6'4", 265.
Bro, he's bigger than me. Bigger than me. When we were playing, when I was yoked up, he was bigger than me. That was my teammate my last year in the league. That's weird watching the dude be so big, man. I'm telling you. But that's all of them. I mean, Eddie George was that big. Jerome Bettis wasn't as tall, but he's that big. Fred Taylor, not as tall, but big and strong. Like, you had some real, like, Sean Alexander wasn't little. Like, these guys were not little backs. Like, how many little backs were there? Like, Warwick Dunn was a little back. Like, you had some of those guys. Like, Brian Westbrook was a little back. But you had, like, Deuce McAllister, big backs. You don't have little backs in today's NFL, but you're just not hitting. Is just not. They don't place a premium on the physicality of what the game represents anymore, and it's just kind of sad, to be honest, because you built a reputation off of highlights of guys getting maimed, bruised, hammered, destroyed. You built the brand off of it. Most of these guys in the Hall of Fame, especially defenders, they would not be in the Hall of Fame in today's NFL. Just purely based off of the rules and the way they've legislated the physicality of the game out, you know, taking it out. It's just you built the brand on that, but now it's not good enough because what? Because the product doesn't matter anymore. It's crazy, man. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. Well,